This is Jocko Podcast number 492 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
The dealer NCOs carefully placed Lanzarin's remains into the ambulance for the final 100-yard ride to the helipad. First Sergeant Shaw commanded order arms, and in unison, the salutes dropped. Wordlessly, the formation closed ranks behind the ambulance and followed it into the darkness to the edge of the helipad. The chopping sound of two Marine CH-46 Sea Knight helicopters in the distance soon replaced the constant hum of generators powering Camp Ramadi. As the whir of the rotors grew louder, the members of the silent crowd stood a little straighter. As the helicopters flared to land, a dust cloud of sand and pebbles filled the air, prickling the faces of the assembled soldiers. The back ramps of the Sea Knight dropped, and two crew chiefs moved swiftly across the helipad, came to attention, saluted, then led the dealer NCOs to the aircraft for Lanzarin's trip back home. Colonel McFarland and I stood next to the ambulance in silence. Within minutes, the back ramp rose. The assembled crowd snapped to attention. As the whine of the engines increased, First Sergeant Shaw's voice filled the air again. Present arms. With the blades spinning faster, the lifting helicopter's prop wash blew sand harder into the faces of the troops gathered in formation, this time holding their salutes until the birds were out of sight. Again, Shaw commanded the formation. Order, arms. For Staff Sergeant Lanzarin, it was the beginning of his journey back to his grieving family. For the rest of us, it was time to continue the mission. Some soldiers left immediately, grieving on their own. Others milled about in small groups, telling stories about their departed friend. Remember that time? Or you remember when he took the... Some just stood, quietly sobbing or kicking the dirt and vowing vengeance. As we walked down the hill from the helipad, Colonel McFarland put his arm around me and asked me how I was doing. Sir, I'm fine. We're fine, I replied as I slinked out of his embrace. I had a job to do, and for the sake of the unit, I could not go wobbly now. My job was to lead the living. Tony, you know Dealer has taken 25% casualties, he asked as I was lighting a cigar, getting back into character. Yes, sir. More counting the guys from Dagger. Chris Stilling's advisor team has lost almost 50%, I acknowledged. Colonel McFarland had seen a lot of injury and death in the past 4 months, as had we all. Up to that point, I had never thought of it as a percentage, but as individuals. Scotty, Love, and Crombie were dead. Rozansky had lost his legs, and Sergeant McCool was shot. Now Sergeant Lanz was gone. My guess is that one of the staff officers at the brigade headquarters ran the numbers, and the magnitude of what Team Dealer was accomplishing and the cost associated with their success hit Colonel McFarland all at once. I'll get you guys some more help, he promised. I was truly grateful. I thanked him, and he turned and walked away into the night. And that right there is an excerpt from a book called Ramadi Declassified, and it was written by Colonel Tony Dean. It's a book that I discussed with Colonel Dean on podcast 452. And in that section of the book, and on the podcast, we talked about Team Dealer, Death Dealers, Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion, 6th Infantry, 1st Armored Division, who was attached to 135 Armor under Colonel Dean. And we talked about their aggressive drive to accomplish the mission despite the sacrifice and the heavy losses. And while it was Colonel Sean McFarland with the strategic goal and leaders like Colonel Dean turning that strategy into operational objectives, it was the soldiers and Marines in the company's platoons, squads, and fire teams that were out there making it happen. and taking the fight to the enemy in companies like Dealer. It is an honor to have one of the soldiers of Team Dealer with us here tonight to share his experiences in violent combat and his experiences after. Staff Sergeant, retired, Ryan Jackson.
Thank you,
Ryan. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks for having us.
I'm glad we got connected, which I guess we got connected again through the reunion that's coming up.
Yeah.
The Ready First Ramadi reunion, which is going to take place January of 2026.
20 years. That's crazy.
The 20 year.
That's crazy.
The 20 year. And we'll get into the fact that you ran a little 10-year reunion a few years back for Dealer. We'll get into some of that stuff, but that's how we got reconnected. And we, of course, talked about the fact that you got a lot of healing from a four-legged friend, right? Your dog Caliber.
Yep.
And we'll get into that as well with Canines for Warriors, an awesome organization that has helped out a lot of service members. So we'll get into some of that, but let's talk about just where you came from, some of your background. Where were you born?
Dallas, Texas.
And then where'd you grow up?
We eventually moved to Snellville, Georgia. And,
what's it?
Snellville, yeah.
Snellville.
Yeah. Everybody's somebody. That's the motto.
What, everybody's somebody?
Yeah.
I like it.
It's right next to Stone Mountain, if you've ever heard of that. It's a big granite.
Yeah.
So right down the road from that. And then eventually moved up to Hiawassee, Georgia, which is right outside of Helen. It's bottom of the Appalachian Mountains.
And what did your parents do?
My mom worked for the first company that had the private modem. She sold that.
Oh, dang.
My dad left when I was like 3 or 4. My grandparents had a big role in raising me and stuff. My granddad worked for EMS, Electromagnetic Sciences. They actually invented the cell phone tower repeaters.
Okay.
And the tracking system for the Hellfire missile and all that stuff.
So when you were growing up, were you spending a lot of time with your grandparents then?
Yeah.
Because your dad was out of the picture.
Yep.
And then what was growing up? Did you actually live with your grandparents?
No. I just, I was with them on the weekends, and then some evenings. They were close enough that we'd go over there for dinner and stuff, and they'd pick me up from school, pick up my sister and stuff.
Okay, and so that was the sibling scenario. Was one sister?
Yeah, I got a half sister and 2 other half sisters, but no contact with them.
Okay, and then what were you into when you were growing up?
Dirt bikes, hockey, and trouble. And girls.
Georgia has a hockey scene?
Roller hockey.
Roller hockey.
Yeah,
You didn't specify roller.
Yeah. I've actually never roller skated in my life. I started out on roller blades and started playing hockey.
And was there like club? Like what was happening down there?
Full leagues.
Yeah. Are people still playing roller hockey?
I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe.
I saw some some comedian talking about roller blades.
Yeah.
And it was like, once somebody said something negative about at rollerblades and everyone got rid of them real quick. It's like everyone had them and then someone said, no, those are for girls. And then everyone threw them away real quick.
We used to do like the aggressive skating, like grinding on sidewalks and stuff.
And that's what you were into growing up. And then dirt bikes?
Yeah. We had a lot of land up in North Georgia. So my granddad was always big on dirt bikes and motorcycles and stuff. So I grew up, my first dirt bike, I think I was like 6.
Okay.
And since then, I had them riding all the time. I'd race them, motocross races.
Oh, you did motocross and everything, huh?
Yeah.
Did you ever look at one of those Army units where they have like motorcycles? I guess that's SF.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I know SF has motorcycles.
Yeah, they got all the cool toys.
Yeah.